Thank you so much for being here tonight. I tell you honestly, I did not expect, I'm not going to talk. I did not expect so many people. I think all of you and everyone who has an interest in these things. I want to share before I begin something very swift, and some of it is going to come swift. I wanted to make this tape. If I was to ask now, will my relatives please stand up? Not one person would stand. God, protect me from my relatives. I can take care of my enemies myself. Last summer, my partner, Rosalie Jones, and I performed Mythmaker, the most unique Native American theater piece ever done in this country, I promise you. If it was here tonight, you would agree. The last 6 shows, 5 standing ovations. We built it from the magic of the elders of the different tribes that we have been serving over the last 2.5 years through the West and Northwest. My partner, Rosalie Jones, Daystar, is the umbilical cord to sanity in my life, truly. And if it was not for her, I would not have decided to do this tonight. My original thought and my original hope was only to do a tape that then I would dub and give to my sisters, my children, so my children would know a truth about their father that no one knows. No one knows what I'm going to tell you tonight. No one knows about it. I set a date for you. August 16, 1987. Today, by the ceremonial calendar, 13 earthquake. We entered the earthquake cycle on October 9th. We leave it on the 21st. My birthday, which is in 13 days from now, is October 27th. I will be 60 years old. The day of my birthday this year is one flint knife. I live inside of this. This is my law of life, and it has never been prosperous. I light 2 candles. A blue one and a red one. And when I light them, I tie this cloth on my wrist, and I say to you, the earth is my mother. The sky is my father. I am related to all things in this universe. I am your brother, and I bring you a story 20 years in coming. Hocus pocus, dominocus. What do you see? A bunch of people upside down. There it goes. Sometimes the magic works, sometimes it doesn't. I would like some sweetgrass. This came from, look at me shake. I am so nervous tonight. I perform in front of giant audiences. And tonight I am like a beginner. This is sweetgrass. I have a right to do this. This came from Blackfeet country, up where the grizzly bears live. The grizzly bears live where the grizzly bears live, where the Blackfeet live. Up there in northern Montana. I'm sending prayer. I hope I get through this evening. Look at it. Oh, never forget the rose. Never forget the rose. It is very important to the story. And I started very swift. 2 stories I give you. 2 young men, hunters, were on the plains. They were looking for buffalo. And they suddenly came to a place, they see a herd moving fast toward the south. This is a fast version. Suddenly, one of the buffaloes cut loose and moved toward them. It was a white buffalo calf, and as it came closer, it suddenly crystallized and transformed into the most beautiful woman either of these men had ever seen. She was so beautiful. At first they stood in awe, looking at her. How could this be? Look at her. And then the one man had a dark thought. He said, I want her. I want her now. And the other man said, be still. She's Wakan. She is a Wakan woman. But suddenly, the beautiful lady beckoned to the man with the dark thought. He came to her, and she embraced him. And there was like a clap of thunder, and an explosion, and ash went in all directions, and smoke. When it cleared, there at her feet they sang. The elders tell us, there at her feet lay his bones. And some say serpents were crawling through those bones. She told the other man, go and bring your people. Purify this land. Make it clean and build a lodge. And when you have done that, I will come to you. And she did. And she gave them the 7 sacred rites, which Black Elk immortalizes in his book, The Sacred Pipe. Read it. Black Elk was more than Don Juan. He was real. He walked the earth. He knew this land. Another story. 13 years after Hernan Cortez arrived in Mexico, a young man who had witnessed the conquest, seen the raising of Tenochtitlan, heard the cannon, seen the horses for the first time while he was a little boy, had been Christianized, baptized, soaked in the whole damn thing, and now lived in a house and on his days off served the bishop. And the bishop wasn't the bad guy. Oddly enough, there is no bad guy in this story. There's the 2 brothers, though. There's the Indian, and there's the bishop. Now, one day, this man who is known as Don Juan, Juan Diego, was coming across the field, and suddenly, as he crossed past a little hill, he heard a sweet song. This is what he heard. This flute plays a song. The voice of it was ancient when Jesus Christ was born. He heard. He went into the forest to see what was making this beautiful sound. And there, to his surprise, he came upon a beautiful woman. In fact, her description is exactly the description the 2 boys who were up on the plains and seen the buffalo. Yes, she was dressed in white. And she said to Juan Diego, she said, Juan, go and tell the bishop, once a beautiful temple sat on the summit of this hill. It was my temple. It was to honor me. Tell the bishop rebuild my temple so I can do my work. Juan Diego went to the bishop, and the bishop says, Juan, there's no beautiful woman in the forest. You're crazy Indian. You're filled with superstitions. I know you guys. He says, forget it. But the next time Juan passed through the forest, again the music, and again the beautiful woman. She said, go and tell the bishop, build my temple so I might do my work. The story goes on. All sorts of intrigue in it. Juan Diego is being haunted by this woman. The bishop is throwing holy water on him. It's a demon. No, we can't find anything. They had him traced, tracked, followed. Nobody could see anything there. No beautiful woman. Yet Juan Diego would see her. Could it be? One morning he woke up. His uncle was very sick. He was dying. He said, go get the bishop, get the doctor, come back. Juan had to go hurry to the church. And in order to get there fast, he had to go through the woods on that little hill. And there, sure enough, she stood. This time, over the beautiful white dress, there was blue. Yes. There was blue. And there was stars on her dress. And he looked into her eyes. And he said, I must hurry, but what? And she says, Juan, you know what? Take off your sarape. Juan took off his sarape. He threw it on the ground. He spread it down. She says, now, take these roses and put them in your sarape. And fold this up. And fold this. And fold this way. And this way. And now, Juan, go and tell the bishop to build the temple. Tell him to open your sarape. And when he sees what is in the sarape, he will build the temple. And so Juan did. And he opened it. And Juan stood there saying, I bet you got a bunch of roses. Not true. There was a beautiful painting of a beautiful woman who was very familiar to the bishop and to all of the priests of the church. What they seen there was the mother of their God. The Holy Mother was there, painted masterfully, with symbols all over. Was it true? 100 years later, the Vatican agreed. She is there. And they allow the temple to be built. Today you may visit it within the streetcar limits of Mexico City. The shrine of Guadalupe, Our Lady of the Americas. Somebody says, hey, Tony, come on. That's a Catholic story. What do you say when people are stupid? Let me tell you, 2 days ago I was at Mythmaker downtown. I walked in, and there, to my amazement, was a man who I worked with 20 years ago. He's white hair, very handsome. He was the art director at CBS here in Denver when I was working with him. He says, I said, Ken. He says, Tony. We shook hands. We haven't seen each other in all these years. He says, Tony, are you still running around doing those crazy things down in Mexico? And I says, yeah. He says, you know, all of your friends at the station or all over the place, they're all retiring. They're all retiring, he said. I said, yeah. He says, when are you going to retire? I don't know. He says, you know, Tony? He says, you blew it. He says, you had a first-class job in television, in He didn't say that, but that's what he meant. You dummy. You could be retiring with a good piece of that green stuff. What have you got? You're stupid. And I said, not then. I took my flute and I went down to Cherry Creek and I looked at the water and I asked myself a question. I says, hey, is a man not a fool? Aren't we all fools? Especially for the woman we love? Am I not a man? Have I been a fool? You damn well right. I have been a fool for her. And I'm glad I have been a fool for her. I am glad that I can say to you, I have been the fool. In every monetary sense, wherever the real buck was really there to mean anything at all, I missed. I have made virtually nothing off my books. I have probably made more off from little plastic Aztec calendars that I create. I carved this one. There's books everywhere. Listen. Listen. We have been the guest of almost every country in the world. We have bought a ticket nowhere. The truth. I asked my brother, Craig Stevenson, to read to you a nomination for the highest award that an American citizen can receive in this country. It was in 1963. That was a very strange year for me. For at the opening of 1964, I had the flute. And Grandpa was dead. And I was looking at my life. Let's see. A famous Hollywood actress was on the West Coast. I had another one on the East Coast. I had a little wife in suburbia Denver and a job in the plastic factory. Television. I drank martinis for lunch and most of the time wished I was dead. I recall what my life had become. By 1967, it was all over. It was all over. It was done. I had left it. I had left Denver. A book, Lord of the Dawn. There are 13 of them out there. I hope you buy one. I hope you buy one for two reasons. First of all, because I need the money. And secondly, because you're the only audience that I've ever told what this book is about. Let me tell you what I've learned. I've learned that many people act like they read it and they read parts of it. That's right. Last summer, a man up by Gold Lake, my partner and I were performing up there. He says to me, he says, Tony, he says, do you know the date that the world will end? And I said, no. He said, well, it's August 16th, 1987. And I said, well, I'll be damned. I says, where'd you get that? He says, that's Quetzalcoatl's date. And I said, who's Quetzalcoatl? And he said, well, he's a Mexican Indian. Don't you know of him? And I thought I'd just act dumb. And I said, no, I never heard of him. Did he actually say that? Oh, yes. Yes. And he has been reincarnated. He's living in Boulder. I mean, that gets spooky, you know. I tell you, I've met 29 other ones. Each one of them needed a shrink. Each one of them needed a shrink. But I tell you the most tragic part of it, they don't know a damn thing about what Quetzalcoatl means. They do not know anything about what they are talking about. That's the truth of it. And I tell you something else. Most of those people with their crackerheads at the University of Colorado, they too, I worked with them for 5 years. And I can tell you, they read each other's books. And they run into a word called spirit. They fire the guy who wrote it. Immediately. Spirit is a cuss word. The man in Boulder up at Gold Lake, told me the date, and afterwards he said that was the Quetzalcoatl date, and I said, well, I'm Tony Shearer. Did you ever hear of me? No. And that prompted the thought to me to say something about my work. Not one of my books have ever been negative about the death of the fifth son. The death of the fifth son, for a reason that I will share with you before you leave here tonight, and you will see it can hardly be considered a catastrophe unless we decide that for ourselves. I don't believe anyone can stop anyone from committing suicide. Not if they really want to do it. And if a lot of people really want to do it, I'll bet they do. I'll bet they do. I want to read you the first paragraph written by Vincent Brown. Out of the formlessness form was created. Out of dark, nothingness, light and beauty were created. Out of a single atom's complex, moleculus eventually came into being, from which life was created. Now we look at a rainbow or a waterfall tossing down over mighty cliffs, and we see the beauty. A tree traces its loveliness against the blue sky in springtime, or a girl's laughter tinkles from the playing field, and we become aware of beauty. Was all of this beauty, all this intricate form, and these marvelous patterns of life, of minerals, of liquids, of gases, created by blind impulse, or was there a creator? And did he have a plan? The very first paragraph of the book, in my own hand, the introduction, this is what it says. This, Lord of the Dawn, this is a love story. And its history lies deep in the heart of ancient America. The story is set within the framework of a terrible and yet wonderful prophecy. The prophecy of the 13 heavens and 9 hells. This prophecy was carved on the rocks of the sacred city of Palenque. in southern Mexico more than 1,500 years ago, carved in glyphs and based on intricate mathematical calculations. It called for the near to utter destruction of all things in Indian America. In Indian America. But promised a fantastically beautiful and harmonious new world for those who kept the covenant with the Creator and the Earth Mother. Thus, all things that must be in balance, and that takes practice. One other little part that I want to read. The earth was a virgin. Nothing grew from her, no trees, nor flowers, nor mountains, and no streams. She was only endless matter, turning through endless space. She was lonely and tired of waiting for something to create. Then the clouds found the earth, and the earth felt the clouds surround her, and she felt the thrill of life in her spirit. She was no longer alone. Now she could create. And the clouds found the earth to be what the clouds had always wanted, a place to stop and a place to create. Then the clouds gathered together in great excitement. The clouds grew dark with the weight of creativeness, with the weight of love. And the clouds rained down upon the earth. And she, the earth, reached up to touch the clouds with mountains of stone from her breast. And the creative forces of the clouds washed the mountains and formed the rivers. Then she, the earth, released the seeds of her flesh, and trees sprang forth with leaves and grass, leaped from her flesh to meet the fresh rain. Bushes and reeds, flowers sprang into being as a result of her love for the rain. The clouds, feeling the force of her love, rolling thunder and flashing with lightning, sacrificed part of his own spirit, and the spirit of the raindrops entered into every bush and reed, flower, into every tree and every living thing. This was not enough. Not enough of him. He lit the sky with lightning and sent forth the greatest sacrifice. This came in the form of guardians of the earth. Tiny spirits, Pakwachi spirits, Tlaloki spirits, spirits of the mountains, guardians of her breast, spirits of the rocks, guardians of her love, spirits of the rivers, guardians of her blood, spirits of the valleys, guardians of her growth, spirits for all things of the earth, and no particle of dust nor grain of sand was left without part of his spirit. And the little people danced through the darkness on the earth, singing the love song the clouds had taught them. And the earth, now radiant with their creation, brought forth her own water. It came in the form of tears, tears of love, and tears of joy. And those tears, they are called springs. Then the Creator of the clouds and the earth, the Father of all fathers, saw what had happened when his creations had met, and he said, "It is not yet finished. Now I will give form." Deer were first, serpents next, eagles and wolves followed, hawks and dogs came, birds with bright feathers, and all the insects and all the reptiles and animals came, and all things that live have their own story and their own reason for being. Then the Creator examined it all, and he said, "Good. Now I will make humans." And immediately a man sprang from the oldest tree on earth. And in that same instant, a woman sprang from the same tree. And that tree is the tree of life. When they reached the dirt and stood up, they started to look for each other in the darkness. When they found each other, they started to look for food.
As the small boats were detached from the great ship and started for the shore, their leader asked a question of the Catholic priest who sat beside him. "What is today?" he asked. "Good Friday, Senor Cortez," the priest answered. "I know that. I mean, what is the date?" Cortez said. "April 21st, 1519, Senor Cortez. Have you forgotten?" "No," said Cortez. "I didn't forget. I wonder if anyone else remembered. This is a very important day. On the day one read, and the year one read, I shall return. I will come from the east like the morning star, and you will know me." Quetzalcoatl. Revelations 22:16. "I, Jesus, have sent mine angels to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David, and the bright and morning star." The year one read, the day one read, had come. The prophecy had been fulfilled, and you do not need the story from Tony Shearer to tell you about that. The library is filled with excellent books, all of them saying exactly what I have said. To everyone in Mexico, a God had returned on exactly the correct day. There is more perfection in that date than simply April 21st, 1519. Much, much more. I want to ask you a question. If you were to look back right now, 1144 years, what would you see? Imagine, 1144, about 840, 841. Where were the Protestants? Oh, well, they weren't yet. They would not be invented for a while. Where were the Catholics? Oh, well, they were kind of having a lot of trouble. Is that true? Oh, you bet your life. Why? Because in the 8th century, a voice came trumpeting out of Africa, came trumpeting from the south, and it shook the earth and shakes it today. A man had declared himself in front of the black banner. Muhammad had arrived. And it would be Muhammad who would explain to the Christians, excuse me, how Christ was born. They didn't know. They had some very confusing ideas about how the Virgin Mary got pregnant. It was Muhammad who explained that to them. If you noticed, there were many things that Muhammad explained that were not quite understood very good for a long time. And if you follow that story through into Spain, when the Moors invade, followed immediately by the conquest of Mexico, which incidentally, the conquest of Mexico, 1519, parallels the date of the breaking apart of the church. Luther was on the scene. Is there something happening inside of all of this? I hold up a circle. There's no way that I can, tonight, in some simple piece of magic, explain all of this to you. There's no way that I can do that. And it would be stupid to try it. I'll tell you why. I can explain it to 6th grade and 5th grade children. When they get into high school, it's more difficult. College, damn near impossible. If you get the professors of the college, you put them to sleep. Why? It's numbers. It's numbers. And the numbers work. Now, this isn't something like some secret
form or formula of something. This is a known fact, my friends. Every woman in this place knows what I'm talking about. The only thing is, she's been separated so far from what she is, she forgot. And the men who have been doing everything from fighting wars to watching the Broncos haven't done a hell of a lot better. In fact, suddenly, grizzly bear, oh my God, deer, the simplest little forms of life, exterminate them. Get rid of them. We are the masters of all of this, aren't we? Go back. Go back and look at the calendar of time. Any calendar. Any of them. And you'll see very swiftly what I'm talking about. When was it that we lost the magic? When was it that we no longer believed in a spirit in the earth? When was that? When was that we stopped believing that? When was it that we stopped really, truly worshiping God? When was that? When we stopped worshiping God. I'm not talking about some rinky-dink formula that somebody puts in a book. I'm talking about the Creator, of who is the damn last one considered today. I'll tell you something. If you think that I'm sane and all Indians are so great, too damn many of us have forgotten. Too many times the damn basketball game goes on. They've got plenty of room for that. But bring in the traditionalists, and the kids don't even know how to receive them. Why? Look at it. Look at you people, I tell you. Most of you have no idea of what Indian life is. None. And the books you read, for the most part, is so much hogwash. And you should look into what I'm saying. See an Indian in Gallup. He's walking on one foot and one knee. He's got a bottle under his arm, and he scares the hell out of you. There's something in his eyes. There's something in his eyes, and it frightens you. He's drunk. And you've heard what drunk Indians do. They're crazy. They're crazy. Sometimes you see them on the res. Terrible. Terrible. You see an old medicine person taking them into the sweat lodge. You see the medicine that can be given, that can be administered. Both the practical medicine and the real spiritual stuff that we need to live. To live. And then, damn it, we hear somebody's making a kick, charging $50 for a sweat lodge. What the hell do you think Russell Means get mad about? And I look at Russ and I say, hey, any of you AIDS people, you tell him I said so. The only way I know who an Indian is anymore is by what he does for the kids. What he does really for the people. Because I've seen enough plug-in bureaucrats in Indian America to last me forever. And I'll tell you something. I count the strongest spiritual people I have met in my life among Native American people who simply can put it right there. They see it. They see it. Many of them, I have a friend, Austin Tumun, Cheyenne. Well, I've got lots of friends like that. I just say, they take him everywhere to speak of peace. And you want something to happen on December 31st? Get Austin in Denver. Is that true? You bet your life. You get a brave Indian in town. The only thing is, people get scared of them. They become leaders. Yeah, America can't forgive the Indians, you see. My book, Lord of the Dawn, was not written with the hope that all of these other people would read it. I wrote it because I was afraid Indian people in this country would not read it, would not know about it, would not know that this story happened. would not know that the guy that the Mormons are calling Christ is none other than Seacatl, Topel-Zin, Quetzalcoatl, son of Chamilman and Mixcoatl, born in 947 at Xochicalco. We know more about his parents. We know more about his parents than they do about Jesus Christ's parents. We have more on true scientific record about it. Yes, it's true. Why would a man with a gray flannel head suddenly say farewell to television, farewell to the luxuries, farewell to the prestige of being there? What the hell would make a person leave all of that and go out to where I'm sitting in a tent in the river, by the river, the Rio Grande, 5 miles below San Ildefonso? Up to the west is Los Alamos, the tree, where dwells the giant creature that frightens everybody in the world. And there where Los Alamos Creek comes into the Rio Grande, across the river, there's a little spring, Popovide. Maria Martinez, the famous potter in San Ildefonso, her son was a friend of mine. He went to the tribe. He says, can Tony put his tent there? It was a beat-up tent that wouldn't keep rain out, but it was winter, and it snowed, and you could knock that off. In a little tent on the Rio Grande, I made Aztec calendars, smoked them with soot from pitch, the sap from the juniper, and the pine that grow in there. Then I take them out to the road. The stuff cost me $1 for 1 box of plaster. And if I can sell this to the first person who picks me up for $2, I get $1 for food. If I can sell it for $3, I get $2 for food. But one thing has to be, I have to get $1 out of it so I can buy another box of plaster. That's how it worked. And on pieces of paper, I wrote from the book that I was reading, Lord of the Dawn. I never read a book in my life. I didn't know I was writing a book. Long story. It's on record. The Atomic Energy Commission busted me. The FBI sat me up in Los Alamos because they thought that I had been electrified by the Metzon facility or somebody. The craziest story you ever heard of. They took me out of my tent and put me in the nice hotel in Santa Fe and then moved me to Los Alamos and had doctors examining me. They touched places I didn't know I had. When it was over, I had met a lady by the name of Rhea Vos. She said to me, you know, I look like death. Starvation. My hair was long. I needed a bath. My clothes were dirty. I didn't have anything. She took me to a Denny's in Santa Fe. She said, let's have something to eat. She bought me something to eat. She says, my kids tell me that you know of Quetzalcoatl. The fuse. And I told her the story. She said, I tell you what, you get your stuff and you move it up to my place and you come inside and I'm going to type the manuscript. She worked for the library in Los Alamos. And so I moved in, destroyed her bathtub the first night. It was awful. It was awful, I tell you. And I would cook and keep house and write during the day, getting all of this together. She'd come home at night, I would give her supper, she would type. The reason? She had been a Mormon. And she learned about Quetzalcoatl. And she fell in love with Quetzalcoatl. And she had had a dream that one day she would type a manuscript about Quetzalcoatl. What I'm telling you is the God's truth. The night the manuscript was finished,
The librarian, the chief librarian, Elizabeth Cooper, had invited Rhea and I to the Los Alamos Inn for dinner. We went over, we're sitting at a table, order a martini, and all of us are happy. The book is written. Comes through the door, Bill Ewing, the director of the Folk Art Museum in Santa Fe. He sees me, he knows me. He says, "Tony, this is amazing." I said, "What?" He said, "I've got a letter that I was bringing to my brother here in Los Alamos. He would give it to you. It came from here. There's the envelope I got open. This is the letter he wrote me. Here's an envelope for you." He says, "The letter he wrote me says, I understand that Tony Shearer is somewhere in the Santa Fe area. Because he's interested in museums, perhaps he will come to your museum. If he does, please give him the enclosed letter." I open the letter, right there. I look at the letter. It says, "Dear Mr. Shearer, our company would like to publish a book about Quetzalcoatl. We also understand that you're an artist. If you would be willing to write such a book, maybe you could illustrate it." I flew from the table to the phone and called him. He said, "Come out." A lady in Denver, a very good friend of mine, Millie Monson, maybe some of you know her, loaned me her Volkswagen. Baha'i buddy in Santa Fe, guy that big, Jim Wood, went with me. We left New Mexico on October 9th and drove to Healdsburg, California. Vincent Brown and his wife Barbara read it. They said, "We'll print it, and you can illustrate it." And I thought, my God, I'll be rich. I'll be rich. I'm going to have a book. Do you believe it? And I stayed right there in these beautiful hills up there by Geyserville, California, up north of San Francisco in the Redwoods. Beautiful. And I ate all of their health foods there. Vincent Brown is a nature, he's a naturalist, and his crunchy time all over the world, bean sprouts and the whole works, and I survived it, I had to sit outside, and all of this stuff, Even back then, in '71, they didn't allow sugar within a mile of the place, Salt was taboo, the whole works. They went the whole 9 yards, And I finished illustrating the book, and when I did, I realized something, that I had locked myself in a room to do all of the illustrations. I did them all in 1 week. The whole book was illustrated, with the exception of one drawing by Carlotta Espinosa, who had worked with me here in Denver along the way, and she had painted the picture of the color plate of Tezcatlipoca, which is she painted this one, I painted this one. I painted the one on the right, she did the one on the left. The book was done, and I realized that I was losing my sight. The Browns took part of the advance on royalty that I would get and got me a pair of glasses. I'll never forget it. I could see spider webs in the forest, in those beautiful oak forests. And God, it was magic. Because through all of that thing, for quite a while, my eyes hadn't worked. And all of those drawings in the book was drawn without being able to see very good. And that may be what's wrong with them. Next thing, the book was finished. The book that was going to be printed next was canceled, a book about whales, and which meant the press would be open. I thought, well, what does that mean? He says, that means you will have your book within 2 months. Seemed impossible. From the time of the tent, and here I am standing there. I immediately followed Lord of the Dawn, Beneath the Moon, and Under the Sun. These books are not unknown. None of my books were ever bestsellers, but I get letters that Michener wishes he got. They come from people like Jake Whitecrow, who says of the Praying Flute that it's a perfect story. He gives the tape of it to people at Christmas time. I get things like that. and lots of things like that. I get to see this book being translated into German and into Polish, even into Chinese. I get to see my work done. And from the time that these books were done, and it had all happened, I was suddenly a different person. I wasn't even the same thing. I tried marriage again. It was suicide. It was suicide. Yeah, it just didn't work that way. And the reason is because toward the end of the marriage, I started to have the visitations again. The dreams started to come back. And that's what I want to tell you about, is the dreams. Now I'm going to tell you the story, and then we'll break and come back for questions and answers. But I am going to make myself comfortable. Mythmaker. I want to tell you that before 1967, before I left television, immediately after 1963, when I was nominated for that award, the year I received this flute from my grandfather, I took this flute with me, and I went, as I did every year, from the 20th of January, my route for 2 weeks was into Mexico, into Oaxaca. I've been going there since 1959. I worked for 15 years for Time Life Broadcast, assigned to such places, the Merle and Friendly program and so forth. Network shows, I've worked with Jackie Gleason and, you know, all of the old heads, Arthur Godfrey and so forth. I would take my time and I would go to Mexico. And in that time I had met many beautiful people, many beautiful Indian people. Zapotec, Mixtec, Mahi, Zoki. I had known outside of the valley of Oaxaca. I had gone to the village of Tehuantepec, like every man who reads the book and finds out, hey, they say the most beautiful women in the world are in Tehuantepec. That's what they say, that's the truth. It's been known for ages. They are striking. They are striking women. They're magical women. And they dominate everything around them. They're beautiful. In that place, I met a crazy Zapotec artist who could speak English, Castelo Romero. He was a secondary school teacher, and we became very dear friends. I would come down, and they would celebrate Christmas when Christmas came, but they would have another Christmas when Tony comes. And I would go to Tehuantepec, get off the bus. The streets were always hot. It was snowing in Denver. I would take my bag, walk down the railroad track, down into the banana plantations, and there to the right of the railroad track was his house sitting back with the big wall built around it and the gate, and his wife and his children, and they were very beautiful people, and I loved them and they loved me. And I would always bring Christmas with me, and they would fix things there, and I learned so much about the Zapotec by being there. Castelo knew how much I loved the people and loved the ruins, because that's what I would do. I would go to Monte Alban and meet Lanyagul and Zachila, and I knew all of these places, still do. My flute's been there, totally different world now. At that time, he said he had planned something for 2 years, to take me to a village that's called Mixtequia. You can look this up on a map. Look for a word that looks like Mixtec, M-I-X, right within the barrio of Tehuantepec. It's right there between Tehuantepec and Ixtepec, very close in. He wanted to take me there because a certain woman was there that he wanted me to meet. A bruja, they called, a witch. But she's a healer. She's a diviner. She knows the mystery. Now, Castelo could not speak Mixtec, but his friend, the cab driver, he could, and so could his nephew, Beto. And so we went to the village, walked out carrying our packs and water and food and so forth, and went out, walked maybe 6 miles to the village of Mishtikia. There it sat. And in Mishtikia, the old pyramids, unexcavated, still sat there, still stood right there. Some of them people had dug into a little bit, but all around it. When we got there, Castello told me, he said, don't stop and pick up anything you see. A German was shot here a week ago in the head. Don't touch anything, just keep walking. And I look at the top of these big, almost Mayan-like pyramids. And there's the Indians up there with rifles, yeah. Yeah, they meant business. They protect this place. It's very special. I go in, and here is a house. Imagine a house, I'll say it's 20 by 20 feet, built of adobe and mudded over. In front of that is a big circle, I'll say 25 feet across, 30 feet across, of upright poles with almost like we would build a Sundance, with the center pole and then boughs going up and brush thrown over, banana leaves and all of that over the top to make it a shade area. And we go in through into the stockade like a certain way, and there she is, the woman. She's sitting here. And she is white-haired and pink-skinned and blue-eyed and very bent over, but she looked as if she should be sitting on the front porch of a house in Pennsylvania. She did not look like any of the people. I was shocked. I would understand. Let me share with you first. This isn't the way I got it. I learned later. You see, she is the daughter of a missionary family that went down there years ago, and they both died of typhoid. She lived, and she stayed with the Indians. They raised her, and in time, she became a true spirit woman. Very powerful woman, this lady. She is very strong. She could not speak directly to me, but I thought at first she resented me, but then I got the idea she liked me. She took me to a place. Now, remember, vast story. She took me to a place where there was an altar. Several very nice Zapotec funeral urns, little ones, and some things that looked like souvenirs almost, like you could buy at the gift store somewhere. But very strange looking, almost new looking. And I never have known about that. But one thing that was there was a tequila bottle. And the tequila bottle was the old clear crystal tequila bottle, very highly polished. She explained through the cab driver, through Castello, to me that she had found this in the ocean. And then she handed it to me. And in the bottom of the tequila bottle, there was an Indian head penny, 1900. And you could not shake the penny out because you can't get a penny in to a tequila bottle. How could this be, I said. She said, through the translation, many things should not be that are. She sat me down. What I tell you is the God's truth. She looked at me and she said, you are a Zapotec. And what you are doing now, you have done forever. You know this land. You love these people. You are part of us. Your spirit belongs to this land. You came from here. This is your place. Before I left, she gave me a whole box filled with very unusual figurines from the mounds around there. Figurines that you don't find in private collections. They are rare. It's sort of a human fish figure that was legend to have come from the ocean once. And there's a lot of story about that. She gave me a whole box of them. They were haunting because if you took them, just the little ones, and held them in candlelight, and just looked carefully at them, they would almost look as if they were breathing. There was something alive about the way these people made the cheeks, and something about the eyes, even though they were just pinched in. They held life. You could imagine it. It seemed real. There was more to it there. There was lunch, and there was talk. and I asked questions, and she gave answers, and I learned some things. But the most of what I learned was what she had given to me. And before I left, she told me, before you die, you will live like a Zapotec. You can't escape it. There is no way you can escape being a Zapotec. That is what you are. A few days later, I was to leave and come back first to Oaxaca by bus, then take the plane into Mexico City, and then, depending on my time, I wanted to take the bus back to Denver rather than the plane. I went to the bus depot. The only bus you can get on in Tehuantepec, even today, is the second-class Indian bus. It's a very strange place to get a ride out of. And they're always crowded because they load up at Villahermosa, which is clear on the other side of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec in Chiapas. So what happens is that I get on the bus, and I have with me Eric Van Hagen's book, Aztec Man and Tribe, a paperback. And I have a little overnight bag that's hard to overnight bag, this big. Maybe you've seen them. They're put by Samsonite, brown, snap, the lid comes up and you've got a mirror here and so forth. But if you turn it this way, it's about the same height as a seat on a Mexican bus. So what I did, I reached a place where I couldn't go back any further. We were beginning to feel like sardines, and that was the way it's supposed to be. It would be 4 hours of this unless somebody got off and you could get their seat. You see? Now remember, my friend and his family and friends that I knew in Tehuantepec had come to the bus depot, and what they would do is they hired a band, and the band was going to play a farewell song for me. And the only song they knew that I thought that meant America to them was St. Louis Blues. And the drummer was never with the trumpet player. And so they were playing, and they were handing me chiclets through the window, and we were laughing. And then the bus got started to leave. It had not become dark yet. And I look, and sitting here, where I'm standing, reading, I look, and here with God as my witness is the most beautiful lady I had ever seen in my life. I couldn't believe it. I mean, truly, striking, striking. I don't mean just beautiful. There was something else here. And I looked at her. And I thought, she's Indian. She doesn't understand English. And I said, "You are very beautiful." And she looked up at me, and she smiled, and she said, in English, "You are very beautiful too." And I could have fallen over. But I tell you, it's the truth. About 15 minutes later, the bus broke down. The carburetor went kaput. They had to send back to Tehuantepec to get parts. They brought it out. It's now dark. It's getting late. And we're sitting there talking. And I'm learning about this lady. And in order to tell you about her, I want to do something. And I didn't think there would be all of you people here. But we got to kind of work fast on this, I think. But I've got a gift for you. Now what I'd like you to do is to start this here and reach inside and take one and hold it and pass it on. When you finish here, take it over there. Would you start here and just take it down, put your hand in, take one and pass it on. Everyone should have one of these. We talk, and as we talk, the more I talk to her, I'm finally sitting on my little suitcase there, and I'm looking at her, and I'm thinking, I would give my soul to know you forever. And as she talked, and I can't tell you, there's no way that I can tell you exactly what was happening or what I was feeling. But it was as if I knew her deeply, truly, truly deeply. And as we went along, I started looking at her, like her hands. Her hands were so gentle, her fingers so long. so artistic in everything about her. She wore a white blouse and a red corduroy skirt, white anklets and sandals. When we stopped somewhere on the road late at night to get some refreshments and so forth, she and I went off the bus, and we never got any refreshments. We stood and we talked, and she told me things about her people, the Zapotec. She told me about her mother and her father, and she told me, she said, I told her the story of what the old Bruja had told me. And she says, that's true. She said, I'll bet that's true, she said. I said, well, how is it that you know English? You talk it as good as better than I do, probably. She said, well, I've been very well educated. She says, I speak several different languages. We traveled, and what I learned was that I was traveling with a very extraordinary person. The feeling of love was very clearly there. And then we got into view of Oaxaca, and she took my hand, and she did to me what you just took from that bag. And I say, please, everybody get one. Everybody get one. I want you to have it. There's a purpose in what I'm saying. Get one of these and keep it. She gave me that. She gave me a kernel of corn. And when we got to the end of the road, which was not the depot at all, it was just the streets, we pulled up. I had my bag up on top. I went around to get my bag. I'll be right back. We'll go get coffee and something to eat. And I climb up, get my bag. I came down. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. The streets of Oaxaca, you can see everywhere. She is gone. She is gone. I looked here, looked there. I wondered, where the hell did she go? What happened? The next day, I stayed in Oaxaca. I said, I will see her somewhere. I sat at the Tule Cafe, which is on the corner across the street from the Zocalo, and you could look down and see the people walking. And I would watch for her, and I would see people who I thought maybe once I saw her, I knew it was her, and I ran 2 blocks to get to her. It wasn't her. I thought about what she had said. You see, she told me on the bus that she knew Castelo Romero, and that Castelo Romero had been her teacher. And she gave me her name. Her name was Unica. Unica was her name. And finally, after calling the station in Denver and telling them I'm going to be late because I had dysentery, I called Castelo in Tehuantepec. That phone call has to go by the telephone to the phone office. They call a cab. They send a cab down to Castelo's house or wherever he's at and bring him back to the phone. That's the way you made a phone call then. They brought him back. Castelo's on the phone. I'm speaking to him. I say, a girl. Her name is Unica Romero. She's my niece. And I said, oh, I didn't know. She didn't say that. I says, do you have her address? I said, I think I've fallen in love with her. And he said, where did you see her? I said, on the bus. He says, Tony, that is impossible. Monica was killed in an automobile wreck in Los Angeles over a year ago. I felt sick. I say, who was this there? I seen a ghost. For the next year, I told the ghost story to the people that I worked with and friends and my family and so forth of the ghost. Next January comes. It's now 65. I go to, or 66. I go to Oaxaca. It's in the winter. It's January. I went to Oaxaca. I seen Castelo. We talked. I said, do you have a picture of her? He says, I want to take you to her family. We went to her family. They live in the barrio of San Blas, and went into the house. I met the father, met the mother. They said they had heard about this. He brought out the beautiful little frame picture studio picture shot probably in Tehuantepec. Should have been. That is not the girl who was on the bus. This is not the girl who was on the bus. I never told them. I never told them. Something went on inside of me that just felt like massive confusion. What am I saying? It felt as if I don't want to tell anyone. I don't want to say it to anyone. What happened? What happened? Who was this woman? Who was this woman? Shortly after I got back to Denver, she started to appear in dreams very rapidly. Every night, constantly. Formulas, calendars, gods, all sorts of things, the old ruins, everywhere. I would be there always in the dark. In the dark. The sky would be black. There would be no stars anywhere, just the buildings and so forth. And she would be telling me things. Now what I tell you, I started to react to them. And I started to figure out things about this. And what would happen is she would tell me something, and I would put it to this. I would learn something about this and prove it. Then I'd write it. And that's how Lord of the Dawn was done. And that's why I was down on the river below San Ildefonso. And that's why Popovi Day went and asked the tribe if I could be there. Was because I was there. I dreamed it. I dreamed being by a spring on the Rio Grande where I would do something. I would write it. Every morning I would come out of my tent half crazy, toot my flute to the sky, thank God for being alive, and go back to my tent and write. I did my mathematical equations for the entire work on rocks with Marquette pencils. When it was done, the moment it was done, the book was published. The moment that one was published, another one was called for. Then another one. Then start going. But just praying flute, Song of the Earth Mother, the story of the sacred woman. The story of the sacred woman is what it is, in a very different format. Before that book was finished being illustrated, the dreams started to come. She started to show up again, very clearly, this time in blue. My wife, she wanted to go find herself. She did, I hope. I took my little boy, we moved into a teepee over at Ignacio, Colorado. We're living in a teepee when a letter comes. I open the letter. It's from the International Theater Institute. I've been selected as a bicentennial gift to European theater. The next step, I would now go into the world. In Baltimore, Maryland, 1976, with Luis Valdez and a whole group of theater people, I had my last encounter with the lady in blue, with the lady, because it was her, at a wedding ceremony that became almost a legend among theater people who was there because of what happened. She left, and she didn't come back, and she was gone. And I made the trip into the world, to all of these countries, and flew my flute, and did all the things that I did. I never seen her again. She was gone. She remained gone in my life until right after the 4th of July this last year. I'm looking down the barrel. Dean Stonier has the Psychotronics convention here or festival, and I might be speaking there August 16th. I would be there with other people that I knew. I was at the same time booked to the Indian ceremonials in Gallup with Rosalie. We needed the money. I couldn't make the thing with Dean and these people. So many things happened. I had the dream, and very clearly. She came to me and she said, Tony, very clearly, she said, Tony, tell them about me. Tell them about me. And don't stop telling them about me. From now on, Tony, tell them about me. And if they say, I'm scared for what's going to happen in the future on this planet, tell them about me. And if they get tired of hearing about me, say, look at a picture of a deer. He was first. Look at the pictures of the wild animals. Hold a leaf in your hand. Take a seed of corn and plant it in the earth. Call it a prayer. Call it a prayer, and don't wait till December 31st. Don't wait for anything. Do it now. And I tell you why. And you damn well, you know it. This planet is in real trouble. There's no place to hide. If you're storing food, you're foolish. Think of the children, because that's what you'll think of before it's over. If there is a catastrophe, you will think of the children. Think of ways of healing people, of comforting people, of loving people. The kernel of corn I gave you. The reason I gave you that is I want you to know something about it. That is a hybrid corn. It's hybrid. In other words, it's closed pollination. It cannot pollinate. You cannot get a stalk of corn with corn cobs from it. It's like a robot, like a human who's closed up. They cannot pollinate. When the human pollinates, we love. When we love, we pollinate each other. And we allow each other to experience the beauty of that pollination that we do. If we close up and we cannot pollinate, we become like a steel-belted robot, totally unnecessary as a human being and as replaceable as piston rods. When we pollinate, when we do it, I love you, or I wouldn't be here. I love you. And I'm scared to death that somebody's got the idea that it's all over, that life with us on this planet is almost to an end. That's a bunch of baloney. Don't believe it. Someone said, Lord of the Dawn, he's coming? I said, come on. Don't you get enough of that? Don't you get enough of that stuff? Hell no. He's not coming. He never left. He's been here all the time. I would have never got on the damn bus in Tehuantepec. I would have never seen what I thought was a sacred woman and compare her to Our Lady of Guadalupe and White Buffalo Calf Woman and say, hey, that's my experience. How did it happen? Something touched me and I seen it, because it could be you. You're a sacred woman. You're a sacred woman. You are all sacred women. I am a sacred man. We are sacred people. And when we do our sacred work, the spirit of this creation is rushing to help us. Should we take one step to accomplish that purpose? Is that true? I tell you, Lord of the Dawn, the morning star. Why is it called that? That's Quetzalcoatl to us who believe that. That can be Jesus to you. What do you want, Jesus to come back? Holes in his hands and the whole thing? Which one would you want? The Mormon version or the South African version? Would you want the Indian Christ to come back? Which Christ would come and why would he come? It would be a spirit. It would be a spirit. And it would first happen to us. Because what's happening, you see, first the morning star comes. It clears the horizon. And if you're in camp, you get up and build your fire, put on the pot of coffee, and get ready for what? Here comes the sun. The great light is coming. That's what's happening. That's what's happening, my friends. We are about to experience the greatest light this planet will ever experience. And the colors of it are already present among us. Look around truly. Truly look and see what I am saying is true. I'll tell you how you know it. Because all the other garbage is also true. It's also true. If it was going to be doomsday, why would Austin Tumo be running around with all these other crazy people talking about peace. Peace is here. We have that peace. The morning star, Lord of the dawn, followed on August 17th, 1987. The sun will rise. I didn't just make this up. It's written in my second book. It's written already. I've made none of this up. The sun rises on a brand new world. Is that world already here? Oh yeah, that's just a time cycle. In 1144 years from now, in the year 3131, the people will be gathered together, and they'll be saying, holy cows, I'll bet we're going to blow it up again. It happens every 1144 years. We really get nasty about it. Then we step into another world, into another reality. And what's happening to us right now is that. And the sooner we release to it and start realizing that the only safe piece of property on this planet, the only safe piece of real estate, is the property you hold in another person's heart. And that's where we are. And I bring you that as a message from all Native American people who love their children and who want to see a great tomorrow. Because inside of all of this plan, you're going to see something happen with Indian America within, I will wager you, the next maybe 2, maybe 3 years. But you're going to see something happen that's going to change many thoughts, many ways of thinking around this planet. Watch and see. Something is cooking among the people. I want to say one last thing so that you say, hey, this guy's just been putting us on. Anybody can say this. I want to go through and then we'll break. There's no way that I can do this swift. I won't. So that you totally get it. Just want to say the whole calendar is based on 13 times 20, which is 260. The unique part of this is that 365 and a fourth day is in a solar year. What we do is we add a day every fourth year. We call it a leap year. All right? The people of old, these people did not do that. They saved the fourth day for 52 years and then added 13 dead days to the end of that cycle, marking the end of it. Now then, if you say 365 and a fourth times 52, you get 18,980 days. Now, if you say 260, the ceremonial calendar, times 73, 18,980 days. This echo circle is constructed. The echo circle is constructed of 22 52-year cycles. It has a place to begin and a place to end. It began in 843, it ends in 1987. It has cycled 1,144 years. Why? Well, that would be 22 times 52. And the way that is accomplished is 13 heavens, beginning with heavens, followed by 9 hells. 13 and 9, 22. 13 heavens, followed by 9 hells. The first hell was entered on April 21st, 1590, the day that Cortez arrived. If you draw an echo across this, you will find 999, the year that Quetzalcoatl died. 52 years before that, 947, the year he was born, he lived 52 years. Each of these hells continued to get more severe until finally, and I don't know how many of you have watched the television shows I've done or any of that, but I'll just tell you, finally, March 6th, 1935, we entered the last hell. Adolf Hitler denounced the Versailles Treaty, calling for German disarmament, and marched into Austria. The Second World War began. So did the ninth hell. Every one of these circles, every one of these have its echo. Across from Adolf Hitler, 1363, asked the archaeologists. The so-called Tenoch, the Aztec of Mexico, initiated the first holy wars, declaring themselves the chosen people of the sun god. Across 1935, Adolf Hitler, with another chosen people, marched into Austria. As we go through this, as we go through these, more and more, one after another, without knowing something more than I suspect that you do about the real history of this land, which has been the history of this land, Europeans have just arrived. They just got here, damn it. Don't be in such a hurry. It all works out. This place we live on isn't called America. That's the first thing you got screwed up. This is Turtle Island. It's Turtle Island. And it has a tradition and a reason for being. It has a reason within the history of this land, and that reason goes back further than the teachings of Jesus Christ. It's Dawn Horizon stuff in this country. What I tell you is the truth. Someone says to you, well, how can I be? It's not my fault I'm living in America. Hell, I was born here. I didn't take anything from the Indians. Well, nobody said you did. But there's something else happened, wasn't there? Wasn't there? Not you, not me, all of us. Something else happened. Somewhere along the way, we started to believe that dirt was real estate rather than being sacred. And without this earth being sacred, we know what happens to it. Had of those people who pollute the land been taught by a decent teacher, they would have never polluted the land. Had at the time of Custer, someone listened, because it was very clear. It was said, the earth is my mother, the sky is my father, the wind is my brother, the clouds are my sisters. I am related to all things in this creation. The ideal song of the medicine wheel. I'll turn this over in just a moment. 7 directions, I say. 7 directions. Not 4. 7. East where the sun rises, west where it sets. North, the land of 9 moons. South, the sanctum of the serpent. That's 4. That divides the creation into fourths. Up, the 5th direction. Sky Father, that's a direction. Down, the 6th direction. Earth Mother, 6. And someone says, now you're stuck. Where do you get the 7th? I use my head. I use my head. I am my own direction. Which way do I go? I am the 7th direction, so are you. We each have that. That is confirmed by the number of holes in your head. which is multiplied by the number of limbs. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times 7, 28. The moon lives 28 days. There are 28 ribs in the buffalo. Usually there are 28 eagle feathers in the wapaha, the sacred bonnet of the Lakota people. There are 28 posts in the Sundance Lodge. And most important to us, 28 days separate the sacred cycle of the human female. The human female. The calendar of Mexico, this magnificent piece that will do all sorts of things that I don't have time to tell you about tonight. It will do all sorts of things. Is a feminine calendar. How many days is a pregnancy? All over the world? Let me give it to you. 260 would be a good rounded day. When the woman's period is missed, I'm pregnant, she says. Where is she within the sacred calendar? She starts counting the time, the days. Each day, she does a ceremony that regards the child that's inside of her as being a living thing, important to this universe, important. Teaching it, telling it, respect the earth, respect the sky. If she does that right, she remains healthy and happy. And the child is born because that is where we're first formed. The thoughts that's in our mother's mind before we are born is the patterns. And do you notice how many women today are doing just that? Exactly that is what they're doing. And they're doing it without an Aztec calendar. They're doing it because they're remembering their women. If conception took place on the day one read, 260 days later, it will be the day one read. In other words, I was born the day I was conceived. What is that? That is not a solar calendar, a lunar calendar, or a Martian calendar, or a Venetian calendar. That, 260 days, is a human calendar. And with this human calendar, you get more birthdays than you do with the solar calendar. Which means we got Social Security screwed. 1144 for each cycle, 5 past worlds. Imagine, way back then. Let me go through this and then I'll make it easier for you to imagine. 1100, 4 times till we finally reach the date. This is August 16, 1987, the date, the year date from the beginning. 5,720 years. 5,720. The Jewish calendar, which counts time from the creation of man in the lush Garden of Eden, their calendar will read 5,747 years. The difference of 27 years in that extremely long period of time would be suggesting that something happened to the human race 5,720 years ago. They got the first time they got hell scared out of them, and it scared them into awakening. And they started to wake up. They were no longer the creatures that they'd been. Now something was happening. They were beginning to realize something. Take Aristotle's source of it to work. The first world, we became conscious of one sense in the first world. The second world, we got conscious of another one. The third world, we became conscious of a third sense. And finally, as the third world was departing, we became conscious of a fourth sense. But in 843, as the fourth world collapsed And the Mayan civilization crumbled from there all the way through North America, all of the mound builders into South America. Chaos was everywhere in this country. It wasn't just in Mexico. The old Mayan civilization folded then. It would return, but under a different set of rules. The fifth world was born. The world for earthquake. The first world for jaguar. The second world for wind. The third world for rain. For water. And finally, the fifth world for earthquake. For earthquake was October 9th, just a few days ago. It was Shay's birthday, the lady who spoke here just a while ago. That was for earthquake. It will happen several more times before August 16th. We are in the earthquake cycle right now. It started on the 9th. This isn't, I just didn't make it up, it's in print on it. It will last till October 21st, when we go into Flint Knife. Each world, we've got more senses. Finally, we're in the fifth world. And here it is again. Chaos is everywhere. We're all scared. It's all over. Buy 20 pounds of pinto beans. It might be a cold winter. What do we do? How do we get to the sixth world? By using the sixth sense. The sixth sense. We use our head. We use our head. We open up. We pollinate. We pollinate. We do exactly what Jesus Christ said. Be the lilies. Be the flowers of the field. Pollinate each other. Exactly. There is no conflict among the real spirit. There isn't one. In the real spirit of this earth, there's no conflict. When you see the chaos that's all over the world, you know we've got a bunch of jerks as leaders. Everywhere. Everywhere. They're all a bunch of crazy people. What's going to happen to them? Be damned if I know. I doubt it. They're going to disappear real fast. But I'm going to start looking more to you and more to you. I'm going to deliberately start planting seeds of corn just for the hell of it and set them up as prayers everywhere. And I'm going to schools and I'm going in and I'm going to start removing fear from the children. I'm going to start telling them that the adults are a bunch of jerks, stupids, and that people who talk like that should be taken out and kicked in the seat of the pants. And I'm going to tell the kids, don't listen to them. And if the kids can't get that way, we'll finish it with a beautiful Indian story. And all of the children will follow me into the shining mountains up where the grizzly bears live, where it's safe. We'll do a brief break here, about 15 minutes, and then return for questions and answers.
Collecting the love offering as you leave or during the intermission. As I said in the beginning, all of the funds collected will go to filming for this further work. There's art for sale, posters and so on out in the foyer. Please see the people that are working the desk or me if we can help you.